I am delighted to bring up to the stage Dr. Rupal Patel. I shall use her full title for today. Dr. Rupal Patel, our Policy and Research Director, and she is going to kick us off talking about the youth employment landscape with the very best of colleagues, Andrea Barry from the Youth Futures Foundation, Jan Richardson-Wild, CEO of Occupational Awards Limited, Laura Davis, CEO of BASE, Mafia Watkinson, who is the policy lead at West Midlands Combined Authority, and between them, what a collective bunch of brilliant women, by the way, they are going to kick us off on why we've got such a problem ahead and what needs to be done. So, very warm welcome to the team.
Morning, everybody. I'm absolutely petrified that now we're going to have to put on a show this morning, but super excited because I've got 4 fab ladies here to put on a show with me. Can I just start off by saying I'm absolutely loving the bright colours that we've all got on today. We know that Christmas is definitely around the corner. In terms of our panel today, we're going to be using this session really to set the scene, to really discuss some of the challenges around youth unemployment, why the figures are so high, and what young people and which young people struggle the most in terms of making that transition from education to employment. But I know that some of what we'll be discussing will be really challenging, but I want to reassure you that it's not all doom and gloom at all. We're a great bunch of people here today. We work in this sector. We're here to network with one another. And we're going to use really our panelists' great kind of insights, their expertise in the great work that they're doing in this area. So I'm going to kick our panel off with, if we could just go down in terms of you introducing yourselves and just saying a little bit about your organisation and where you're from and what you do. And I know that you're doing lots of great things, so should we try and keep it quite pithy to 20 to 30 seconds? Andrea, do you want to kick us off?
Now it's my turn to figure out if this. I think that's. I'll be honest. I'm a loud person anyway. I think that's working. So hi, I'm Andrea Barry. I am a principal economist at Youth Futures Foundation. We are a national organization that was essentially started because of the large gap in NEET rates, employment outcomes between marginalized young people and other young people, and that was back in 2019. And we've grown back when I joined 3 years ago from 20 to over 70 people working to help all young people get a fair shot at good opportunities. We run evaluations, we run research, we do economic modeling, we also do grants, we also work with employers, and we work in the policy space as well. So thank you.
Hi. Is it working? Yeah. Hi, I'm Jan Richardson-Wild. I'm CEO of Occupational Awards Limited. We're an awarding and endpoint assessment organisation. We're approved for 45 standards in food, drink, engineering, manufacturing, marine, business, creative, lots of different occupational sectors. So we work with hundreds of apprentices and young people throughout England. We're a not-for-profit organisation, so we're about investing back into the sector. We want to create opportunities for young people and look at how investment in young people and different programmes, particularly with the new government, can make a difference and bring more young people into apprenticeships and other forms of learning. Our key objective is to promote the value of learning and the impact that it has on the individual in terms of career progression. And a lot of people that work at OAL have really benefited throughout their life on initiatives and support from organisations like us to be able to advance in their career. So that's a key goal we have with all the work that we do.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Davis. I'm the Chief Executive of the British Association for Supported Employment. We are a national members charity with around 350 members across the UK. And really excitingly for us, we're having a growing number of employers that are joining our membership as we have a clear mission that employment must be for all. Our members across the UK are supporting disabled and neurodivergent and disadvantaged people into good careers, moving away from that idea that any job will do and making sure that employers are valued as equal partners. We work very closely across government and have been working with them on the new Connect to Work programme, which is rolling out in 25-26, and are one of the partners with the Department for Education on the Internship Works programme.
Hello, my name is Marcia Watkinson. I work at the West Midlands Combined Authority and specifically in our Employment Skills, Health and Communities Directorate. I lead on our insights work, which enables us to take an evidence-led and best practice approach to what we commission strategically. We've had devolved adult education powers since 2019, and we have approximately 170 million that we use to invest into our skills system. Fundamental to the work that we do is about supporting our residents and our businesses to be able to access good jobs, thrive and grow, all culminating together to ensure that our economy can grow and prosper, and that the West Midlands can prosper together. So fundamental to that then is about opportunities for young people and how they have access to good quality training provision that will enable them to access good careers and support employers in that growth story.
Fab. Thank you all. What a panel. Can I, Andrea, come to you first, just to start us off then with some statistics and figures in terms of where we currently stand with youth unemployment, thinking particularly about our NEET figures, but also in terms of where we are internationally too, would be really helpful.
So the UK, like LJ mentioned, the latest NEET stats were released about a week ago, almost 2 weeks ago now, and it was a bit surprising because the UK has had pretty high NEET rates, quite frankly, for a while. So consistently, the UK has had about up to 10 to 12% NEET rates over the last decade and a half. It's been consistent. Sometimes it goes slightly below, and then sometimes it goes above, but it kind of stays around the trend, which is around 10 to 12%. And unfortunately, on the year-to-year change went from 871,000 young people who were NEET to 946,000 young people who were NEET. And that has consistently been largely amongst young men. So young men now have a 15.1% NEET rate compared to young women, which is 11%. And the change over the year was that young women were more likely to start looking for work, whereas young men were more likely to stop working, stop education, and stop doing any of that, and to go off either sick. I think the biggest jump was long-term sick, and we are actually attributing that in the data to mental health struggles, and then also inability to access care, so hospital care if they need it, so they're off sick. As well as the group is less likely, young men are less likely to go into full-time education anyway, so for some young men, they do not see that as an option, and therefore for them it's work, and if they're not working, they're not doing anything. So that's been the change over the last year. When we look at some of the other groups, and this is, I think is really important for us to think internationally, I'll do international first. When we look at the OECD, the UK consistently usually has one of the worst NEET rates in the OECD. Compared to other countries. I mean, you have the star countries of the Scandinavian countries, of the Netherlands. You also have the Spain, the Italy, who have really bad NEET rates, but they have their corner, and they've had the worst NEET rates in the OECD for a very long time, and they're happy to stay there. I'm looking at Spain, Italy, Greece, but we know that where that came from. That came from the Euro crisis about over a decade ago, and it stayed there consistently. In fact, Italy had a reduction in their NEET rates because a whole bunch of young Italians left. Right, the young Italians who could get a job left Italy, and that's why Italy had a reduction in their NEET rates. Whereas the UK is consistently happy to stay quite frankly, middling around 12%, as I said before. And that's compared to probably the big star, which is the Netherlands in Germany. The Netherlands has a 4.6% NEET rate in the Netherlands, and that's because they have a entirely different system for getting young people into something and stay there for something. And I think that's where the UK sometimes differs from the Netherlands. They spend significant amount of money ensuring young people have a placement, a pathway, and it's the the fall through the cracks are significantly less. Now, that's not to say that they don't have some struggles like the UK does. The difference, and I know some of my colleagues here will talk more about, the difference between SEN and disability, but the difference between the NEET rate for the Netherlands for SEN and disability is the same gap. It's the same percentage gap that the UK has, which shows to me an overarching international problem with getting young people from certain backgrounds into good work or into education. So that's something we do have in common. But I mean, the stat that my CEO and my organization loves is if we could match NEET rates with the Netherlands, we could add 69 billion pounds to our economy over future years. And that's true. I mean, we've done some analysis on it. That difference is loss of productivity, loss to your local economy, and loss to the national economy, and loss to the treasury as well, quite frankly, because of the loss of tax receipts. So I think when we look internationally, we have some countries that are doing extremely well with when you look at economic analysis between them, they have similar style regions. They have some regions that have had previous struggles that were used to be mining, that used to be old factory areas, that have reemerged as certain different types of areas. And those young people are in good work, they're in education, and they're in a pathway. And the UK, unfortunately, has not fully smashed that yet. They are still struggling with that transition, and it shows in our higher NEET rates.
Great. So we know that there's, of course, in England, there's 1 in 8, young people who are not in education, employment, or training. So, what do you think are, the big challenges that we face? What are the reasons why youth unemployment and our NEET rates are so high when we compare ourselves nationally and internationally too? Just go down. Jan, do you want to start us off? Yeah.
Well, there's challenges for young people in terms of mental health.
Yeah.
Health and well-being is a key issue, I think, in terms of them needing that support. I think a lot of young people have caring responsibilities as well. So that is a big challenge for moving them into employment. There's also the challenge of identity and self-exploration, which is a key area for young people these days in terms of their identity and how they fit in with the world and fit in with what some of us might call the norms. There's also social media. Technology is a big challenge. There's a big divide when it comes to social media and technology, and also the impact of social media on young people, and that also links to their mental health. I think we still very much talk about the academic route and career progression, and that was a big focus of the previous government. That we still talked about A-levels, GCSEs, a big emphasis on maths and English. I'm very interested to hear the speaker before me. I've worked for years on English and maths programmes, functional skills programmes, key skills programmes, and here we are 25 years later and we haven't made a lot of impact. We still have lots of challenges when it comes to developing young people's skills when it comes to English and maths. And it's a key challenge when it comes to apprenticeships because we've focused apprenticeships on the achievement of level 2 and level 1 functional skills, which is a significant barrier to engagement in programmes and also progressing and achieving in those programmes. I think relationships and social skills link to the identity crisis that young people have as well. They have major challenges on building those relationships that affected their mental health and the ongoing impact of COVID-19. Also, I'm vice chair of a college. We've had huge growth in mental health and that impact from COVID-19 on people, just their ability in terms of skills to engage in relationships with other people, to be able to develop the skills. They've got huge skill gaps in terms of being able to engage and communicate effectively. And that is a big impact in terms of moving them into employment and having the skills that employers need and require.
Laura?
Thank you. I think to think about the kind of the challenge for young disabled and neurodivergent people, we have to start with some of the statistics. Actually, the disability employment gap remains large, around 17% difference. But actually, when you unpick that, there are particular groups within disabled and neurodivergent communities that remain the most excluded groups. So people with a learning disability only 4.8% of people have a paid job. Only 9% of people with autism, and only 27% of people who are blind or visually impaired. Actually, but when you start talking to groups of young people, over 80% of people want a job. So there's this real disconnect between the aspiration and ambition of young people and then what employers are providing at the other end of it. I think it starts at a young age. Actually, we have to build greater ambition and aspiration into our education system. We still see pathways where people are deemed employable or not employable. And I absolutely challenge that. I think anybody can work with the right job and the right support if they're motivated to do so. But even that motivation piece, we have to unpick that. Could you imagine being in a world where you are presumed to never have a job and then suddenly someone saying to you, oh, by the way, you now need to work and you need to be motivated? Actually, we've got to start thinking about the strengths and talents and aspirations of young people and building models around that, so building really kind of person-centred approaches. I completely agree that the entry requirements into education remain a huge barrier for this group of young people. We know that actually, in the previous year, there was only one person that successfully transitioned through a T-level who had an education healthcare plan. That's horrific. There are huge amounts of investment being put into pathways where whole groups of young people are absolutely excluded from that. I do a lot of work with business and they're telling me that actually the maths and the English requirements are not important to them. The strengths and the ambition and the talents are what's important to them. So we've got to build better systems where everybody can navigate their way through them. Now, there have been some amendments to the maths and English requirements. But again, you have to have a diagnosis or you have to have an education healthcare plan. Now, I'm the mum of 3 neurodivergent young people, and not everyone has a pushy mum like me that knows how to navigate their way through the system. That is a huge privilege that my children have, because I knew how to get what they needed. Lots of families don't have the time, the social capital, or the energy to be able to navigate that. And an education system should not be based on who your parents are. So we need to do a lot better at that. Benefits remain a huge barrier for this group of young people. You just heard over 80% of people want a job, but we have a benefit system that keeps people trapped. It keeps whole families trapped in a system where they can't dare to dream or try for fear of actually losing their benefits. I was talking to a number of people recently, and actually for lots of young people, they have to get signed off as sick in order to access something called an internship. Now, the evidence rates show that over 70% of people that go on a supported internship get a paid job. But actually, in order to access it, you've got to go and get a doctor to say you're too ill to work. So some of those systems are really not helping. And then I think the last thing to really think about is we've got over 19,000 employers signed up to Disability Confident. But if we go back to those original statistics, something isn't working. And actually, I don't think it's because employers are bad people or don't care. Actually, I hear the very opposite. But what employers are telling us is they don't know the how. They get the why, they know why they need to build inclusive workspaces, but they don't know how to do it. And so I think we need to get much better at building a disability confidence scheme that actually has something under the bonnet, that there are some accountabilities, and things like the Disability Employment Charter are a really good way of navigating that.
Thanks, Laura. I'll come to you, Marfiat, before I come in.
I couldn't agree more with what Jan and Laura had said. And I think I'm going to pan out for a moment and talk about more from a system level what those challenges look like. Because we've heard lots of statistics about young people. But if we think through the system, do we know where those young people are? Do we know where they live? Do we know enough about the experiences that they're having so that we can connect them to those local opportunities, we can connect them to the employers, and our evidence base tells us exactly the same information about employers' aspiration to support young people? Do we have that knowledge to be able to do that? So at a national level, how are we enabling at a local level to be able to have that level of insight? And the realities are it's still too difficult to be able to release data that really talks to the challenges for local people on a local plane. So, for example, understanding the volume of NEET by area is a challenge. Understanding who are those NEET young learners is a challenge. Understanding young people who are leaving school without meeting the minimum standards of education, where are they and how can we support their transitions into an alternative type of education? And I was just reflecting on what Jan was saying. I used to teach literacy I was going to say sixth form, that's not true. I used to teach literacy in an FE college, a local FE college actually. It was mostly 16 to 21-year-olds. And teaching literacy to young people who it's their first language, but they're really struggling to connect with the syllabus and connecting that to their vocational aspiration. Well, how can we do that better? Well, data is one side. The other side I would suggest is about that qualitative aspect. Mm-hmm. And the Youth Voice Census, which Youth Employment UK sponsor, and we were a regional sponsor of, tells us so much about the experience, the lived experience of young people and the challenges that they are facing. It tells us, it's a really depressing read, but it also really tells us the stark reality of what they are looking through the lens of. So lots of young people, great aspiration to work, they want to work, but they just don't know what is the right career for them. They're a bit worried that they might make the wrong choice, so how can they start again, and can they start again? They lack role models. They're looking around their social network, they're looking around their communities, they're looking around their school leaders, they're looking around employers, and they're saying, I don't know where there is a place for me in that place. So for young people, what can we do to be able to support them in doing that? And I think one of the arguments I would make is about us working together. How can we work better with employers so that we can be part of that bridge? How can we work better with education providers to support that transition for young people? And most importantly, how can we connect to the voice of young people to be able to ensure that they have a sense of agency over their lives and the choices that they make, so that if they make a mistake, they understand that it's okay to make a mistake, because we all do as adults. It's just about starting again and having the pathways to be able to do that. And that's a lot of the work that the West Midlands Combined Authority do.
Thank you all. And what strikes me there really with that opening is we've spoken about a real wide range of challenges here. So we can see the backdrop in terms of what causes youth unemployment to be so high. The challenges in terms of the backdrop is so complex. You know, there's lots of things at play here. But the word that I really like to pick up on next is actually, you know, Laura used it again and again, was system. Then Mafia picked up on system too. And it feels like the systems are not working for young people, but also systems are not getting the information they need to be able to have practical solutions to combat, you know, youth unemployment. What really strikes me here is that there's a need for different organisations to work collaboratively, and we need some sort of cohesiveness with the education system, employers, local authorities, councils, all coming together to ensure that young people are getting the support they need and getting onto a pathway that's suitable for all our young people, regardless of the different needs. So I guess the next question is, you know, how do we make that happen? How do we facilitate a system where we've got, you know, different parts of our ecosystem working together? Which is a big question. Who wants to kick us off?
I guess I could start. We're Youth Futures, we're doing a program called Connect to Futures, where essentially we're trying to do that. We're trying to see how local areas, local partnerships can work together in a partnership to create a better system for young people. So one of the areas we're working in is Blackpool, and they identified pretty early on that the data that they had on a local level was not up to scratch. It was not going to work for them to be able to identify which young people in schools needed additional support to get what they need to have a good outcome when they left school. And that was the original research was based off some research Youth Futures had done, which could see which which marginalizing periods could overlap to make you more likely to be NEET. And Blackpool recognized that they had a lot of young people with those experiences, and how can they address them early. So they went and started working with every employer that they could find, the colleges, employment support, the council, and the more regional and then national figures to see how can create a better system with schools. And one thing that they found out with the schools is the schools didn't have the time. So the schools are, quite frankly, busy. They're understaffed. They don't have enough money. They don't have enough money. And they didn't have the time to engage with an exercise that could link data and allow them to, almost a computer could spit out a name of a young person, what the problem was, and how it could be helped. And they didn't have the time to engage with that. Their systems weren't up to scratch to engage with that as well. And I think that was a bit eye-opening for Blackpool, because it was, we have a solution, we have a way of changing the system, but those engaged within the system don't have the capacity or the money to do that. So I think that could be a really first step for understanding why some areas, like a Blackpool, a Hull, might be really struggling with things like that is because of money. So.
I think one of the really good things, though, in terms of an opportunity that we now have, is the 240 million investment as part of the Get Britain Working initiative. And we've also got the Youth Guarantee and the trailblazer areas that have been set out in order to spend that money and put in place what we need is joined up services. Which I think you were describing about Blackpool. They knew what they wanted to do. We know what the solution is. We just haven't had the investment. And the other issue has been getting all the services in each local area to work together in a very coherent, joined up way. Now, we've got a massive opportunity over the next year or two with that investment and the Youth Guarantee for those areas to really get in place those support services aligned, working together, sharing data, having key support workers that can work between each individual organisation. The sharing of data and the whole GDPR and everything will be massive challenges to overcome, to be able to share information. We have tried it before, back in the early 90s, to some success. However, and that did have success, and we did bring down the knee in quite a lot of areas. We've picked some really good trailblazer group areas, though, for this 240 million investment. And some of those areas have been looking at how they can have more joined up services, more wraparound support that enables the young people to have all the different aspects that will help them. Before, we've just had disparate interventions that haven't solved the whole problem. So let's make sure we take this opportunity to try and get this right this time.
Thank you. I share that optimism actually as well, which is surprising because I've not felt that way for a little while. Again, we see with the Get Britain Working, actually a programme called Connect Work has been announced. And actually for the first time ever, DWP are using an internationally evidence-based model to support disabled and neurodivergent and disadvantaged people into work. That is huge potential. The model is not just about focused on the individual, but it's about focused on the individual and the employer. What I love about it is it's all aimed at making sure that people are accessing good quality careers that are matched to their aspirations and talents. Historically, DWP programs have been based about an any job approach. And all of the evidence, so Manchester Metropolitan University did some really interesting research that showed that approach doesn't work for young people, that approach doesn't work for communities, and it does not work for business because it's about churn and getting people out into the labour market, but then they can't sustain it and they drop back out again. So I think there's huge potential from some of the, the investment that's being made. I guess what we now need to ensure is that there is a clear evidence base. We need to make sure that what is commissioned is what is actually on the tin. And I think we have a risk that in some local areas they will go and commission something that doesn't use the quality framework that underpins the supported employment model, and you could end up with something that is a little bit like work and health light. And the evidence shows it doesn't work. So I think it's our collective responsibility to make sure that when commissioning is happening, that actually the right thing is commissioned and it's using the clear evidence base around what works for young people.
Well, I hope that's exactly what the West Midlands Combined Authority do. So we are one of the trailblazing youth guarantee areas, and we're really excited about that. And I suppose I'm going to anchor it around three principles. One, evidence, to be able to understand what are the challenges and what do they look like in our local area. Relationships and partnership making. We are but one part of the story. So how do we work together to be able to do that? And then lastly, testing and learning, and it's one of the strengths of the WMCA. So in terms of the evidence base and thinking about that space, when we look at, for example, the youth claimant count, what we can see is since the pandemic, and there's been a steady rise, there's been a 24% increase in youth claimants in the WMCA area. That's compared to 14% nationally. So we're seeing an upward trend in our area. We have very high rates of economic inactivity in our area. We have real challenges in our labour market. Our employers are struggling to fill vacancies. We've got about 66,000 vacancies in the area. Employers who really want to be able to connect to that. But on the count of that, we're also seeing a decline in apprenticeships. So there's a decline in access to youth opportunity. We know from our relationships and the partnership making that we've done with regional DWP, which is very good, with our colleges, with our universities, with our employers, that there is a real appetite and ambition to do something together to be able to support our young people, to ensure that there is that connection. So we are working to stimulate apprenticeships in the labour market. Through our levy transfer scheme, we're working with 25 levy donors who have contributed over 50 million to be able to support 2,000 SMEs to be able to create 4,000 apprenticeships. I mean, that's phenomenal. That's just one example of how we can work together and be able to make some lasting change. And on that testing and learning, so colleagues have talked about the rises and challenges for young people, and mental health is particularly a strength in the sense that the numbers are showing that it's coming through really strong. There's a real challenge for our young people. Well, we know that point that Laura was talking about, one size doesn't fit all. So we're testing and we're learning. This year in September, we piloted our Thrive at College. We're working with 6 local colleges to be able to think about what does a whole organisation approach to mental health, resilience, good strategies look like. And that's about supporting our young people, absolutely, but it's also supporting all our learners, because when we go into the labour market, we will experience challenges. So having the tools to be able to be more resilient, having the tools to feel that we are equipped in that space is just good sense, it's just good practice. And that's just one example of how we are testing and learning. And when we know more about what the Youth Trailblazing Guarantee can do, we have very bold ambition for what that is. And we are absolutely clear it's going to connect to our Mayor's Youth Plan, of which he's also pledged 20,000 work placements to be able to ensure that our young people can connect and transition from education into the workplace and into lifelong careers.
Great. I equally share your optimism with what the government has announced in terms of, the £240 million, but also it feels like that this government is really taking that connected approach between departments, but also in terms of local areas across the country. We've got lots of employers with us today, and they're going to be a big part of Trailblazers, but also they're a big part in terms of pathways for young people, ensuring that our young people have got those good quality youth employment opportunities. So I wonder, if you could talk a little bit about how do employers prepare themselves for what's coming in terms of all of the policy announcements, and just in terms of how can they build those better inclusive opportunities for our young people.
I guess just to start, as an economist, I can understand the concern employers might have with the increase to NIC as well as an increase to the minimum wage. I mean, economic evidence would show that doing one of those things at once would have an impact on jobs, and the impact on jobs would, of course, economic evidence, which say would be on young people, because it would be those on the bottom of the labor market. I think we can understand the concern, and I think the government actually understands that there is a concern about that. But I also think they're listening, and I also think that the employers in the UK have an opportunity to really engage with the government about how they can create better conditions for employers to create really good jobs. You can also see that with the other policy announcements they made about essentially getting rid of the lower end of the labor market with 0-hour contracts, and that's part of raising the minimum wage, rights on day one, etc., because the government is really trying to make really good jobs. So I think having a consultation with employers can do that. But I think another thing employers can recognize is, quite frankly, your power in your local labor market. One thing that was not mentioned, I think personally, on the barriers was the barriers of a poor labor market for a young person to find a good job. If their local labor market is, quite frankly, crap, they're not going to be able to find a really good job if the jobs are not there. And I think that's where employers really have an opportunity. There's really good evidence out there. There's really good evidence of interventions where people have gone in, worked with employers and created really inclusive areas and opportunities for young people. Engaged with the government about apprenticeships. Our youth employment toolkit has shown that is the best way, one of the best ways for a young person to stay in sustained employment is an apprenticeship. It offers excellent opportunities for them, but also engage with the government and say, your current standards for entering an apprenticeship is not working for young people, and it's not working for us because we do not have enough young people entering them. So I think use your power, given we are having a slight economic downturn, middling economy currently, and you have the power to create better opportunities, work with the government that wants you to create those better opportunities as well.
I couldn't agree more. I think that this is the time for employers to really have a strong voice with the new government and influence them on entry-level programmes and develop far more entry-level programmes that enable young people to have the stepping stone up to higher level apprenticeships. There's been a big focus over the last 6 or 7 years on recruiting apprentices at much higher levels. And also there's been a decline in level 2. I mean, I know Sharon is a big advocate of promoting level 2 apprenticeships, particularly in business admin. A lot of the level 2 programmes and pre-level 2 programmes declined under the last government. We need to look at that and look at what those entry-level and pre-employment apprenticeship programmes need to look like for young people, to be able to bring them into work and give them the foundation skills that they need to be able to have good career progression and move gradually on to other programmes and other apprenticeships at higher levels over time, not them just go in at level 3 and level 4, because that isn't a supportive framework for all the barriers and challenges we've talked about that young people have in order to enter the labour market. So we've got to get employers now to lobby to be able to use the levy for that extra percentage that was promised for other programmes, so they can build entry-level programmes, but also really valuable pre-apprenticeship programmes that are meaningful and allow for good career progression.
Thank you. I can see we're running out of time, so I will try and keep mine short and sweet. Employers can't afford to not think about building disability inclusion into their workforce planning. You know, we've got 1.8 million people who are not in employment at the moment due to disability, ill health, or long-term barriers. We've got 1.3 million job vacancies at the moment. And actually, it isn't just about early careers planning. 80% of disabilities are acquired during the lifetime of someone working for you. If you don't start getting this right, you as a business are going to really struggle in the future. So actually building disability inclusion into your workforce planning also future-proofs you as an organisation. I would say you have an opportunity like you've never had before. 2 weeks ago, we held our first ever Business Disability Confident in Action Summit. We had over 100 employers in the room. They all told us the same thing. They know the why, they don't know the how. There is an ecosystem of organisations out there just waiting to support you for free. So I think it's now time to get out there and engage and connect into those communities and that ecosystem of people that will help you.
So I'm going to do a massive plug to the stuff that WMTA are doing because it's on your doorstep. So the first one is Business Growth West Midlands. Is all designed to do exactly what Laura was saying, support you as businesses to help connect your workforce to the skills offers that you might need, to the support that you might need as a business to grow. So definitely have a look at Business Growth West Midlands. Included in that is funded leadership and management training to be able to support your staff who will be supporting your young people that you're hiring. So the second thing I'm going to say is, as part of the Mayor's Youth Plan, we have an ambition for creating 20,000 work placements. We've already had over 5,000 pledges, so it's a call to action to you. Please engage with the employer pledge. Pledge your commitment to hiring more young people, because truly that will make such a difference to young people to know that you are there with them, to partner with them, to support them, because so many of our young people think that employers don't want to hire them. And then lastly, I would connect you to our Path to Apprenticeship offer, which is aligned to our economic plan. We'll be supporting young people. It connects our skills investment to ensure that you get the right skilled young people. It connects you to our excellent colleges and training providers in the West Midlands so that you can co-design something that is right and relevant for you. Thanks all.